You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, we're talking about the 1988 anime classic, Akira. Here we go. This is Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez. With me today, Fan2Fan All-Stars, Allan and Rebecca, hashtag Stranger Friends. Thank you guys for joining on this because we're talking about a movie that's kind of iconic.
Thanks for having us back, Bernie. It's always a blast being on the Fan2Fan. It's an honor, a privilege, and I'm
1 out of 2 ain't bad. 1 out of 2.
I'm just so happy to come on and talk a little Akira, which I discovered with my early 20s working in my video store at Mike's Movies, my video store, to go back and look at one of what I feel is one of the greatest animated movies ever. It's going to be a cool trip.
Hands down. And Rebecca, I know when we've had you on the show before, you've mentioned anime. So I know, Rebecca, you're kind of a card-carrying anime fan, right?
A little bit. I mean, not nearly as much as some people I know, some people that live in this house.
There are some diehards.
But there are a couple that I know really well and I enjoy. And yes, big fan of Akira and have been watching it for a long time. I just, every couple of years we watch it.
A city on the edge of insanity. A biker gang out for blood. A punk kid with a chip on his shoulder. Scientists, soldiers, and politicians fighting for control of a force beyond human comprehension, known only as Akira. Everyone ready? The apocalypse is about to begin. Akira.
Do you remember the first time you saw Akira, Rebecca?
I actually watched it for the first time in high school as part of our America in Film class.
Ooh, very cool.
Even though it's not an American film, the dub version brought it to America and really made anime popular here. It was the beginning of the, 90s anime boom.
Exciting, mysterious, intense, graphic, provocative, raw. This is no ordinary animation. This is the exotic, bizarre, and beautiful world of Japanese anime.
I just have to ask, do you remember what other films they covered in that class? I just want to see what the group picture looked like that Akira was a part of.
Nothing like it. We watched The Breakfast Club and...
Okay. That's pretty modern. I was waiting for you to say Citizen Kane or Metropolis.
We did watch Citizen Kane, but we kind of did it early and quick, probably because our teacher knew that we weren't going to pay attention to it as well as some of the more modern films. So
that's pretty awesome.
I think a lot of American film classes cover Citizen Kane, Bridge on the River Kwai, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I've taken a few of them over the years, and Easy Rider, the mixture of Americana movies, war movies, and then to have Akira pop up in a high school film class outside of Boston, Massachusetts, kind of shows you its gravity.
I think that's pretty impressive by the teacher that was aware enough of the class and the students and maybe what would keep their interest to throw in something like Akira into the mix. But like you were saying, Rebecca, for me, this was part of the, what I remember what was called Japanimation, because that was where you would go to Suncoast and there would be this overpriced $40 video that maybe you could buy, and it was Ghost in the Shell or Robotech, but compared to some of the other stuff that we grew up on, stuff like the Flintstones and G.I. Joe, anime was cool. It felt less like a cartoon, like a kid's cartoon, and felt like it was more adult. And Allan, I think when we were talking about Saturday morning lineups, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, a lot of that stuff that looked like anime, had the feel of anime. I was writing down a few shows that I remember watching more as a kid. Since we're pretty close to the same age, I think some of these shows you might have seen also in reruns. Stuff like Speed Racer, Gigantor, Star Blazers, Battle of the Planets, Voltron, like I said, Robotech.
All right, move out.
Yes, sir. All forces, move out. We are under attack.
Robotech, this afternoon at 3.
In all the galaxies, there is only one ultimate power of good. Voltron, a legendary champion from ancient time. Voltron, called back to save mankind.
Get ready for a thrilling space adventure as young galactic space explorers rediscover the secret of Voltron. Come, join the Voltron Force. Voltron, defender of the universe.
Don't miss the actions. Mornings at 7 on 60.
Do you remember watching those like before or after school?
Sure. I remember Voltron specifically. I remember a little bit of Speed Racer, but Voltron for me had that sort of feel like Transformers that seemed familiar to me.
Those shows were kind of like sneaky anime because we didn't know what anime was. They were just shows that looked a little different than Mask and Snorkels and all those other shows that we loved. Like, this wasn't Muppet Babies. Speed Racer was different. And then when we got to high school and you learn, at least for me, about Ninja Scroll and Vampire Hunter D, and then there's blood and nudity in cartoons. Like, because I know you've mentioned you're a fan of Miyazaki, so like I have to imagine like Kiki's Delivery Service, Nausicaa of the Wind. Those were mid to late 80s anime films that were released, but Ninja Scroll, Wicked City, and some of those, did you ever get a chance to watch any of those, Rebecca?
I did not. I did not know those. My big one was Sailor Moon.
Okay.
It was on after school for me, and middle and high school, I think.
And I think that's probably where Sailor Moon was almost like incorporated into like after school programming. Like we were watching Tailspin and Darkwing Duck.
It was on at 3:30 and 4. There were 2 episodes.
I just remember thinking if I had Sailor Moon when I was a 12-year-old boy, I probably would watch it as much as possible.
I never saw it, but I know shows like Sailor Moon. I think there was a Ranma Half, Dragon Ball, but they were shows that you would see after school when Adult Swim started to become like a thing. That's where you would start seeing anime as part of like their programming. And I think if you're a growing network like Cartoon Network and you're trying to do something like Adult Swim, what's the best thing to do? Well, you start showing stuff like this that looks like it looks different than everything else. And then you throw in, something like Dragon Ball or Cowboy Bebop. I mean, all shows that just kind of set the tone for what anime is. By the time we're kind of learning about that, Akira really kind of led the way because it was part of that first boom. Like you were saying, Allan, it was part of your video store? Like they had it in stock at the video store that you worked at?
Yeah, so I had I come across it just basically on a recommendation. Everybody who worked there was into anime, and I wasn't yet because as I've said many times in the past, I was hired there sort of like on the basis that I would know the new releases and like action movies, and then I started actually getting like an education. One of the sections I was drawn to was the anime section. And someone had me watch Akira, early on, and immediately it went in my picks, and it stayed in my picks for pretty much the entire time that I was employed there. I was very, very proud to have Akira in my picks. I thought it made me look cool, off-brand, and what you do with your picks is you hope to share, movies that touched you, movies that moved you, with other huge movie fans, because let's face it, you're renting from employee picks, it's because you're also a huge movie nerd.
And this is your invitation to enter with the modern classic Akira. Critics say Akira makes Blade Runner look like Disney World. It's action-packed, the future of animation. Siskel and Ebert call it the video pick of the week.
When you find out one employee that you vibe with and you know that, oh yeah, they're recommending things that I like, then when they recommend something you've never heard of, you're willing to give it a shot. I have to imagine same with Akira. All right, so let's dig into Akira here. Rebecca, you mentioned you guys kind of revisit this every few years.
Absolutely. We do have it on DVD. We've had it in the entire time we've been together.
Why do you guys like this movie so much?
It's just it's the story. I mean, the story itself is it's compelling. The characters are really looking out for each other. Finding yourself, finding your place in the world. Being a hero for the moment. That speaks to us. There's so many elements of this movie that draw you in and just trap you for 2 hours. It's a 2-hour movie. That's a lot of time to give up for an animated movie, and we're willing to do it every time.
It's not Disney, and it's 2 hours long, and it's not kiddish, it's not cartoonish. It's meant for adults, the violence and the themes that are much more mature. So Rebecca, why do you like to throw this into rotation as often as you do?
One of the things that I love about it is the animation itself. It's a beautiful movie. Mm-hmm. It's really well done. And the color, the use of red, the music and the sounds in it, those parts really get me too. And having it be something so different than what you usually get, because when you watch a movie for the first time and it hits you and you love it, when you watch it again, as long as it holds up like this one does, it brings you back to that feeling that you had the first time where you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that something like this could exist.
Yeah, it holds really well for rewatch, right? Like every time you, at least for me, it seems like maybe for you guys too, every time I rewatch it, I feel like I pull something else from it that I feel kind of dumb, that I'm like, why didn't I see that last time? But I think it's because there's a lot of layers. There's a lot there.
Yeah, because you're like focusing on something different every time you watch it. So it becomes new again.
And that's kind of like the commonality with a lot of those movies that I have to imagine, Rebecca, were in that class where whenever you revisit like a quote unquote classic, however you define classic, right? There's something about the movie that kind of rewards you for coming back. And, it doesn't have to be Gone with the Wind. I think that's what Akira does. Like I was writing down all these themes, action sci-fi for sure, religious fanaticism. There's a cult in there. There's like a whole thing about like government control, revolution against the government, terrorism, politics, cyberpunk for sure. It doesn't matter if it's animated or it's not created in the U.S. or revolving around the U.S. Those themes work regardless.
And it also, when it comes down to it, it just feels really cool, right? Mm-hmm. Awesome looking.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Motorcycles and riding around and like the futuristic look. It's just cool.
Mm-hmm. The vapors on the back of the bike.
Oh, the light trails?
Yeah, that's sort of I think I noticed for the first time tonight, we were doing a rewatch, just to get sharp. You underestimate certain things in this movie for what they are, and I think that there was just this theme. He's the star of the movie, right? But there's a certain quality about him. Despite the fact that he's this motorcycle gang punk and gets in trouble and he's kind of a loudmouth and kind of a goofball, he has this ability to sort of come through in every moment.
I was going to add to that. It's also kind of cool that, like, I think, again, watching it every time, I feel like I get something more. And watching it this time, I saw more of the relationship between Kaneda and Tetsuo. And you just realize more that Kaneda, as much as he seemed to be like a big brother kind of figure for Tetsuo, that he was also a bully, the big brother that kind of pushed him around, didn't think he was ready. They had this big brother, little brother dynamic, but I think that's what makes him as a character kind of cool, because he's not like the cape wearing type of hero. He just realizes that, there's some shit going down, and right now someone has to do something about it. And I think right now I want to help my friend. So it's not like he wants to go out and help the world. He doesn't seem to be altruistic like Superman, where he's like, well, I want to save everyone. He's like, no, I want to save my friend, because even though I'm a little bit of a bully and, we're part of this gang and we just beat the shit out of a bunch of people. Yeah, there are a bunch of hooligans, but he gives a shit about his friend and he wants to help him.
He does. And I think, Rebecca had a really poignant comment about Tetsuo today. When Tetsuo had the power, this is what he really was on the inside.
He's, the little, like, almost the runt of the group. And then this happens and he gets the power, and it's the power that's corrupting him. But do pay attention. He was kind of looking for this. This is his personality inside. It didn't take much for that power to corrupt him and for him to search for more and become angry with it, because he already was that. He didn't want to be the runt. He wanted to be Kaneda, have that position of power, but not understanding what that really is. That is underlying in him already.
At one point where Tetsuo was admiring how much stronger he was than Kaneda at that moment when Kaneda and Key got into the hospital. Tetsuo was battling with the Espers, and Kaneda is like, "We're here to save you," and he just kind of laughs. And that's what she said. She goes, "Wow, he's an asshole." As you remarked, Brett, he was sort of always waiting for the chance to not be the runt of the group, not be that friend that we all have that we sort of shit on them because they're always screwing up, or they're always in trouble. We always need help. So we give them a little extra aggravation.
Tetsuo's years of that pent up aggravation. You can almost see it where like this gang is hanging out. They go to Culver's to meet on Friday night at like midnight, but then at the last second they change and they go to Wendy's, but they don't tell Tetsuo. So he shows up and he's texting his buddies, his gang members, his family saying, "Hey guys, where are you guys at? Oh, we're at Wendy's. I thought we were supposed to meet at Culver's. Nah, I didn't." And you could just tell, like, that's not a personal experience. I'm just saying it was McDonald's. But you could just tell there's years of that, of him getting shit on, him getting forgotten, whole crew buying the same jacket, except they don't buy a one for Tetsuo, or they make him buy his own, or he makes his own when he's finally in that position. Like you said, Kaneda and Kei are there like, "Hey, we're here to help you." He's like, "Screw you, man. Like, you weren't always there to help me. Maybe I'm going to take advantage of this little bit. And like, I'm going to stand a little taller than you right now."
And you really see where that comes in once he ends up with the cape, of how he's seeing himself.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Especially because the cape is red, which is Kaneda's color usually, right? His bike and his jacket. So he is showing him like, "Oh, I'm the hero now," right? That's how he does see him. So Tetsuo is showing off with that cape and having it be that color. "I'm the most powerful. That makes me the hero."
That's a good read, because there's that one scene where the scientist is talking to the colonel, and there's a little bit of exposition where he's basically saying, back in the day, Akira, who's this government project kid, they develop his powers so much that this explosion happens, right? So they try to hide it, and they say it was a nuclear explosion, and that's how we get Neo Tokyo. So World War III, yeah. They're like, "Oh, yeah, it was a nuclear explosion. It was World War III. Nope. It was actually this kid with overdeveloped powers developed by the government." So they hide all of that because they don't want to let people know, to the point where they even hide Akira's remains, put them in storage, so that way, they could probably study it. Meanwhile, Tetsuo runs into that one kid when they're just doing their regular Friday night shenanigans, and whatever was inside him, latent psychic powers, I don't know, but that seems to wake up. And then what you were saying, Rebecca, it wakes up what was already there. The anger, the angst, all that stuff kicks in. And then on top of that, he seems to have these abilities that then lets him kind of do what he wants. But that one scene with the scientist and the colonel, the scientist pulls up. First time I noticed it, Akira's psychic pattern. And it was like this little wave form. It was a cool animation effect. And then he compares Tetsuo's waveform, which you have to think like that's supposed to just represent like their psychic power, right? He compares it to Akira's, and they kind of line up. It seems very similar. I never noticed that before. I think they're basically saying, like you mentioned, Allan, the Espers, these kids with powers, if they're like level 5, Akira was like level 100.
Right.
And here's this kid who's a part of a gang, probably, lower class, not doing so well, obviously not doing well in school. And he has the same now psychic ability as the kid that literally caused a nuclear level explosion that ruined the city. And then that kid is a pent-up teenager. That's not a good combo.
There's a really great scene where he gets out of the hospital. He escapes. Tetsuo escapes for the first time. And he goes and he finds his little girlfriend there, Kaori. They're hanging out, and he tells her he just wants to run away. He doesn't want to go back to the hospital. And then they steal Kaneda's bike, which is like the first sign that he's sort of getting ballsier or something.
For sure.
About him. He would have never dreamt of stealing Kaneda's bike before, but now something's different. He steals the bike, then he can't drive it. They stall, and the clowns, they see him and they want revenge. And there's just this great moment. The clowns get on them, and it's Tetsuo, and they pin him to the ground, and they're having their way, taking advantage of Kaori right in front of him. Mm-hmm. And the frustration is it's boiling in him. And once again, his boys, Kaneda and Kai, they have to come and they have to save him. Them saving him almost brings him to like the brink of madness.
Mm.
They have to stop him from killing the clown that they grabbed and let him beat the shit out of for a while to feel some revenge. And Kaneda says to him, "You're gonna kill him, man. Like, do you want to do that?" And he pretty much says, "Yeah, I want to rip him in half." It's a moment where I just kind of noticed this is Tetsuo's life. Is just sort of like always being on the short end, like not quite having timing or awareness to be the hero, like thinking to himself, if Canada was in this situation, he would have taken these 3 guys out and, the girl never would have gotten hurt in the first place. And it's an important scene in the film because it helps build the reason, for Tetsuo just sort of saying, fuck it, I'm done trying to be a good person. Yeah, I'm just going to be a bad guy.
And you mentioned like him becoming the hero, which goes back to Rebecca, you were saying that's a great read with the cape. And it makes sense in Tetsuo's case. He's not like, I'm an asshole. It's more like, a combination of what you were saying, Alan, like I've been beat on and I've gotten the short stick this whole time. So I just want to get what's mine. If this allows me to be a little bit up on the people that have kept me down, I'm going to try that. And if he's being drawn to Akira's powers, the remains that might give him more abilities to beat up the clowns, to get one up on Kaneda, to basically show people that he can't be bullied anymore, then that makes sense. In some ways, in his mind, not being a villain, I just don't want to take advantage of it anymore. And yeah, he's the hero in his own story to the point where, yeah, like you said, Rebecca, he's wearing the cape.
Yeah, I think I like to think of he's Peter Parker getting bitten by the spider. He's the little guy, like the nerd being picked on, and now this is his chance to have power. It's just he's going and looking for 100 more spiders.
Remember, you can find the Fan2Fan Podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan2Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN.
On Instagram at Fan2Fan Podcast.
Or on Twitter at Fan2Fan Podcast.
We'd love to hear from you, so send a message and let us know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
One of the themes in this movie that I really enjoy, it's 2 stories happening at once of this whole larger portion, the government and the war, and it's this really big picture thing, but for these 2 main characters, like they're just regular people.
That's a good point, Rebecca. Like the motivations stay kind of tight. I'm trying to help my friend.
That's a good point, is that Canada will not be denied in this movie, right? Like no matter how much Tetsuo pushes him away, tries to kill him, just keeps going back and trying to help his friend right up into the bitter end, where he almost, gets sucked into the Tetsuo blob that's being taken away to outer space by Akira and, or wherever, a different universe. It's a great story of friendship and, sticking by what you believe in. Tetsuo, you can tell his conflict, as much as he's grown to be jealous and hateful of Canada, this is a person who's always been there for him. It's a great look at the madness, the way that these powers are tearing away at his mind. How do I say this? It's just such a good watch. It's so fulfilling. We just watched it, and I'm just like, God damn! I just watched it a week before this with my my 11-year-old, because I was like, it was on, and I was like, but you need to watch this, and then I had to leave, and I got back, and she was like, I want to watch that movie all the time now.
Your kids weren't able to make it on this. Is that the impression you got, that they enjoyed it?
Yeah, definitely. But I know the older one had seen it multiple times.
Okay.
And that was the first watch for the younger one, but she wants to watch it again for sure. She loves anytime we show her movies like this that are unexpected for her.
And I think that's the impressive part about the movie too, is that when we stumbled on it, and being dramatic here, but there were 5 anime that you could check out, and she's now in a world where there's 500 anime. So the fact that Akira still kind of stands tall amongst a lot of really good stuff out there, stuff that is just as mature, that has just as much quality, that has a lot of these universal themes. And it just got me to think what you were saying before, and then that friendship. I think maybe that's what grounds the movie, because the crazy shit that happens in the movie, that doesn't matter, because most people can understand a friendship, and someone who's willing to kind of go above and beyond to do what they can to help out a friend, that theme works. All right, any last words on Akira, guys?
Anyone who hasn't seen it needs to see it. Anyone who's listening who hasn't seen it, go watch it now.
91% reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's over.
And the other 8% are wrong. 9% are wrong.
9%. Fuck them. Fuck them. 91% for a reason. It is largely considered the greatest anime film of all time. Also considered an amazing movie in itself. Forget about the fact that it's anime, right?
Yes.
It's since 2001, 2002, roughly. They've been studios have been trying to figure out a way to make a
the live action, sure.
And right now, the good news is for anybody out there listening, I hope I say this right, Taka Waititi has been chosen to lead this. And the only reason why nothing has come out yet, that was 2017, an Akira live action movie. But apparently, there is some belief that he's going to, when he finally does this, gets his head wrapped around it, it's going to crush. And I mean,
so here's the question then: would you guys, knowing that he's going to do it, knowing what he's done before, would you guys still want to see a live action Akira movie?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely watch it. Yeah, I want to say the basis for that is Jojo Rabbit.
Okay,
knowing how he handled that tells you that he'll do it well. It's serious, but not too serious, being able to combine them so that they flow really well together. And then obviously, I mean, the other things people know the comedy a bit more, but I would 100% watch a live action Akira movie. I mean, I'd probably watch it whether or not it was him doing it,
sure,
but I'd like him to do it.
I was just going to say that back in the early 2000s when it first came out, the news came out and we were out, we had Variety and all that shit, like to read about.
Wasn't it like Leo DiCaprio was going to be?
He was supposed to be. Yeah, it was Canada in Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Tetsuo,
which actually pretty good casting if you think about it. Yeah,
just imagine the possibilities, especially with like CGI and the way that they shoot superhero movies now. Bringing this to real life would be a treat for me. Hopefully it happens in my lifetime.
I don't know that I want to see a live action version, but I think we've seen this when things do get adapted, they kind of give a little extra oomph or life to the original. And my hope would be if anyone ever makes an Akira live action movie, TV series, that in some ways it puts more of a spotlight on the anime, because then maybe people realize like, yeah, they can be two separate things for sure. One can inspire the other, but it all started from the 1988 movie. That's Akira. Thank you guys.